everybody. Today I'm in the quilting nook of a famous, around here, quilter. Her name is Dinah. Her last name is now
Gabel.
Gabel. Dinah Miller Gabel. And she has been quilting for a while, and I thought it would be kind of exciting and interesting to hear her story. And maybe some of you who are like me that really don't want to have to quilt their big quilts, so they find someone like Dinah who does like to quilt big quilts, and she does a wonderful job. Anyway, I thought you'd like to hear what she has to say, maybe her story, and how it might help you deciding where you want to go and what things you should think about when you want to go to a long arm quilter. So, Dinah, tell us a little bit about how you got started.
Okay, well, my grandmother hand quilted, and everybody in the family had a quilt from Grandma. So it's been in my family for years, and I have a picture on my Facebook page of me pretending to quilt next to her while she's got the quilt on the frame, and I still have that quilt.
Oh.
So it's been in my family, and I do have the first quilt that I made for my daughter, which was a wall hanging, and this was early 80s, and I've always just loved it. I just absolutely loved the piecing and the quilts and the colors and the creativity and everything. So then I tried machine quilting on my domestic machine and, wrestled a big quilt through it and went, oh, I don't like this at all. So back in late 90s, I knew my husband at the time was going to retire, and we needed another income. So, and I had never seen a long arm machine in person, and I didn't know anything about it, but I got lots of quilt magazines, and there's always that ad on the back page, you need this. So I thought, I could do that. So I found somebody who sold them and bought one, never having done it, never having seen it or anything, and just took off from there. I mean, it was like I knew what to do as soon as I got it. It just connected with me.
Wonderful.
So that was 2000, and open to business. I practiced a little bit and practiced on my stuff, and then opened to business in 2001, and have been machine quilting, long arm quilting
20
since.
years.
Yeah, 20 years.
Oh my goodness.
So I enjoy piecing up to a point, but I love the quilting part. I love the design and how it finishes that quilt. There's so many customers that come that's like, well, it's done. I'm not crazy about this quilt, but I want it quilted. And then when they get it back after it's quilted, they're in love with it. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It just, that quilting makes that quilt.
Exactly. I
So-
think that's everybody that's a quilter feels that way.
Yeah.
The quilting really
Right.
makes the quilt
Right.
what it is. Okay, well, you've been quilting for 20 years. When I bring my quilt to you, I usually bring the top and the backing, but I don't bring the batting.
Right.
So is this typical? Yes. You prefer that?
Well,
Or
I like that because I carry the batting that I feel does the best for the quilt.
okay.
A lot of people will purchase batting that's, by the dollar amount, and that doesn't necessarily make good batting.
Oh. Good
So,
point. Yeah.
and batting has come a long way. Used to, when I first got started, it was polyester and warm and natural. That was about it.
Yeah.
And you had to quilt within 2 inches
Mm-hmm.
to keep that batting from migrating or clumping or whatever. And now you can quilt on some of this batting up to 10 inches apart, and it's stable. So that makes a big difference in the quilt. So, and the amount of quilting that you have to do on it. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that's good. But I carry the batting. It's just easier. It's
Do
easier.
you carry different types? Do you carry wool batting and cotton and poly?
Right.
Or just
But I carry all the Quilter's Dream line.
okay.
So, because they have everything. And I do have a little bit of Hobbs left, 80/20, that I have bought, and then I'm using up like that. But mainly it's Quilter's Dream because they are really good quality, and That's what I like. And I can move it. When it's on the machine, I can handle it and it doesn't stretch out. And it's just good batting.
Okay.
So I do that. But yeah, most people bring their top and their backing now. Used to, it was more muslin on the back, and now people are into the backs as well as the fronts. So they bring their backing, they bring their top, and we go from there.
And there are some of us that are using up old fabrics on their
Yes,
backs,
absolutely.
and they just piece it together.
Absolutely.
But always, we should remember when we make the back to make it bigger.
Yes.
Do you suggest like 4 inches?
3 to
bigger?
4.
Okay.
Try to square it up. Like if you have one long piece sticking out, but you want your edge right here, go ahead and cut that long piece off.
That makes sense.
I've gotten both. So yeah, and 3 to 4 inches on either side, and the top and bottom is good, because then I can put it on the machine and it doesn't. I don't have to worry about running out at the bottom of your backing, because the quilting does pull it up just a little bit.
Right.
So
Okay.
just give yourself a little bit of leeway on that.
What questions, or do you have certain questions that you ask the quilt maker when they bring a quilt to you?
I do. I ask.
Maybe we should sit down. Poor thing's been standing, and we are sitting. I'm sorry, I interrupted my own questions. Okay. We are sitting in front of a quilt that Dinah quilted. This is called, I forget what this is called, but it uses like grandmother's flowers. It's called, Flower Shower. And I really like the way that Dinah put little leaves on it and just really made it nice. So it's not a pattern of mine, but it's one that I could do sometime for a pattern if I wanted to go to the trouble. Okay, so back to the question. The question was, what questions do you ask the quilt maker?
I ask, first of all, who's the quilt for? Because if it's for a granddaughter, it needs different quilting than if it was for the retired Marine.
Yeah.
So that's probably the first thing. And then what do you see or what is your intent on that quilt? So like this one, when you the name of it, the flower thing, so that in my mind puts, okay, it needs something to represent the flower part to it. So that just made me think leaves and vines, and I think we talked and you said you wanted it connected somehow so that it would look like. So as it went, I just added leaves to make it look like that. So
Okay.
I always ask them what they don't like, because there are some people who don't want feathers on their quilts. They don't like feathers at all. So that I want to know that kind of stuff. Is there things you don't want, things you love? What's your intent on that quilt? Is it going to be in a show?
Yes, I would think.
Because that will, not that I would quilt it any less if it's not going to be in a show, but I have enough experience with the shows to know to be extra careful with. I don't do stops and starts. I tie off my thread into knots and bury the tails as I go. So there won't be stops and starts to show, but I need to know shows need a little extra attention. If I know it's going to be in a show, I'll be just a little more careful, like a little extra quilting in, to make sure that it's all very balanced and what the judges like. So do that.
And there are some quilts that we make that are more utilitarian, or some we're going to use them a lot, and we might not necessarily want them to be heirloom type quilting.
If you're doing a baby quilt that's going to get drug around and thrown in the cart, don't put your money into super custom quilting. Just let me stipple it or meander, or an overall pattern that will get it done and hold it together well and stand up to lots of washing. Versus if you want a showpiece or a wall hanging or something that, to put your money into something that you want to pass down to the kids and everything like that. So I do ask those kind of questions, but a lot of it is just when I look at the quilt, it's kind of like I let it talk to me.
I thought that's what you did. In fact, I think, I'm gonna skip down here. Do you have some preferred designs that you like to quilt? Or, does it?
I I let the quilt tell me kind of what it needs. I do like to, if you bring a quilt that's all angular and all triangles or, you know, very geometric, then what I've learned in classes that I've taken and just studying quilts is that you need some quilting to offset all those angles so that when you look at that quilt, your mind doesn't get jarred by all those angles and straight line quilting. So you need to add some curves in the quilting at that point. So that kind of stuff I like.
And I think that's partly why we like the quilting so well, because it just, the counterbalance between the straight line sometimes and the curved parts make it just that much more interesting.
Yeah, it does. And it's pleasing to your eye. You can stand and look at that quilt a long time, and a lot of times you don't realize why you like that. But that's part of my job, is to like make it where you want to stand and look at it and see, oh, look at that, or little fun details or something that you want to get closer.
You want to get
see.
close.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I like about that. Yes.
Yeah.
What would you like the quilter to make sure to do before they bring the quilt to you? Is there anything you prefer that they not do before they bring you their quilt?
Of course, it's nice if they're pressed nice.
Okay.
So that they lay flat, so that we're not dealing with running into problems with a wrinkled quilt, or if I come down to the bottom and it's not been pressed and have a tuck in it or something like that from just it not being pressed. One thing that a customer that I have, she does a lot of quilts, and she started doing, and then I've noticed it in a couple others, is she goes around the outside. If she has multiple little pieces that reach all the way out to the edge, she goes around the outside about 1/8 of an inch with a straight,
like a stay stitch.
Yes. And it holds all those edges, because otherwise they start coming apart at the edge of all those little pieces. And I don't fix things as I go. That's not my part to resew the quilt. So
it's kind of hard, isn't it?
I do the best, and if that happens, you know, either I call them and say, hey, this is happening, what do you want me to do, or just kind of put them back together and make sure I quilt on top of that to hold it really well. So, but if you just ran around the outside, if you have, you know, not a border but just lots of little pieces and stuff, then do yourself a favor and like stitch down the edge. So
good point. Okay,
that's good. But just pressed nicely, and you know,
try not to have any big mountains in the piecing.
No mountains. But I've done, you know, in 20 years, I've seen everything. Everything. I've seen a quilt. I remember at the beginning I had a quilt where the lady took all of her mom's polyester pants. Remember the double knit thick and made a Dresden plate quilt out of it. That thing must have weighed 50 pounds done. And with the batting, you know, and everything, it was amazing.
Wow.
So I've seen everything.
So I like to put beads and buttons on quilts. Now, I do like rickrack, so this one had rickrack. Apparently, that isn't a no-no totally to have rickrack, but what about other things on top? Is it best to wait until we get our quilt back to do that?
I would wait, only because if you put a button there, I can't get up to it to quilt, so that spot's not going to have really close quilting around it, where it might need close quilting. So I would wait and put that on. Plus, you know, if my machine hits it, it might break a bead, or
that's
you
true.
know, break a button or something. So I would wait on that and put them on later. If you do put them on, tell me that they're there and where they're at, so I can plan accordingly.
Okay. Before, when I do quilts at home on my regular machine, I always have to, because I don't do it all the time, I always have to get out paper and I practice my design, and then I get out my practice piece and I practice there. Do you have to do that? Do you do that still, or are you better now?
I don't practice the quilting unless it's something totally different than I haven't done. If they want a specific sailboat on a quilt or something like that, I might run over to the side on a practice piece and make sure it's going to look like what in my head it looks like.
Uh-huh.
What I do is when I get the quilt top in, I take a picture of it, first thing laying out, and then I print that in grayscale on my computer. So I'm not looking at colors, I'm looking at value and design ideas. And then I doodle on that piece of paper to get ideas of what I want to quilt on it. So by the time I put it on my machine, I already know what I'm going to do. Because I've like doodled it out on paper and just gotten an idea. Unless I'm doing like just all over freehand swirls or something, I don't have to do that. But for this, to kind of get an idea and how I want the feather border to run, where do I want the curve out, where do I want the curve in, kind of thing. So I draw that all out on paper before. And then I have a whiteboard over here, so then I draw a rectangle and I put arrows which way my feather border is going, because once I roll that top up, go away for the weekend and whatnot, and come back Monday morning, it's like, oh gosh, was that going this way or that way?
Good point.
So I make notes on my whiteboard of directional things to remember what way, just because it rolls up and then it's, unless I unroll the whole quilt, then I don't know.
Yeah.
So I do that.
And that's a good tip for regular quilters
absolutely.
at home. Go ahead and take a picture of your quilt and then print it off, and then it might help you decide what you want to do beforehand and keep track of where you are.
Right, yeah. Because then I take a marker. If I know it's 15 rows long, I take a marker, and as I'm going through the rows, I mark it off. So I kind of, and that's like reading a book versus reading the Kindle. You can see how much more you've got to go.
Good point. Okay.
So I do that.
Well, that's a good little tip. I'll have to remember that.
And the whiteboards are really handy.
Yes, to keep track of.
And to doodle, even if you're doing it on your domestic machine, the connection between your brain and your arm of making that motion kind of makes connections and whatnot. And then when you go to quilt, it does help.
Okay. Do you have suggestions for quilters that are quilting at home, just on their regular machine, or maybe somebody's got a new long arm? Anything that you would like? Do it. Practice.
Practice. Yeah.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
Oh, and I really think yes. That's about the only thing that you can do is practice, practice, practice.
Yeah. Don't worry about being perfect on it.
Right.
You know, you might feel like you're looking at a little 3-inch square that you don't like how that looks, but boy, when you get the whole thing done, you're not going to notice that little thing didn't look exactly like what you wanted, and you'll be done.
And one thing, Dinahs, if you go to a long arm quilter to have them quilt your quilts, there are different kinds of machines, and each long arm quilter kind of has their own style, I guess. And what I like about Dinah's quilting is that it's very unique. She doesn't have, you don't have like a computerized machine, so it's all
freehand.
So I think that makes the quilt, I don't know, I like the fact that it's different. It's all Dinah. It's not a heart from here and a feather from there, and then we put them together and it's perfect, because it's kind of nice to be just whatever the quilter puts on your machine. Okay, we have some quilts we want to show real quick that Dinah has done, and I think we'll go over there and we'll look at some of her quilts and think if there's anything else that she wants to tell us. And she's not far away. Those of you that live around Indy, she has a daughter that lives not too far, and she comes into Brownsburg from time to time. Anyway,
I'll meet you somewhere, because I know I'm
not too far.
Not too far, but it's some people feel like it's too far, so I'll meet halfway or meet. Ship quilts. I have a lot of out-of-state customers, and we just mail things back and forth, and that's very secure. It's easy to do. So
I would suggest if you haven't had anything done on a long arm and you have made some quilts and you are not sure what you're going to do with them, there's good long arm quilters that will make your quilt extra special. So let's walk over here and we're going to look at some of the things that Dinah has done. We're walking now. Track of us here. Okay. So why don't you well, let me put this up here because this is her first quilt.
Yeah.
She already showed me this.
Yeah.
Made for her daughter,
I know.
who is growing up now and a young lady now.
Yes.
When was this? 1980? Did you 80?
Yeah, but probably been 1983.
83.
I was expecting her, so.
So
Yeah.
we all start with a nice
Yes.
little
Something.
and then we
Yep.
fall in love with the whole process.
And then you get to this.
Then you have them all. So
Yeah.
tell us about each one.
Okay,
Or-
this was actually a piece of pattern that I bought in Paducah down there. So
Pretty.
it's called Mexican Star. I
Oh,
love
yeah.
that.
I love the fabric.
Just love that. So,
Huh.
and this is one that, to me, it had kind of a Western theme to it. So I wanted the quilting to resemble some leather tooling and things like that. So
It does.
That's the thought on that. This is a
Okay.
wall hanging that I made that goes up in Mark's office. He's a Marine.
Well, we better show that.
Yes,
Oh,
so of course
dear.
there's stars and everything like that on that.
Oh, I know somebody that would like this.
Yeah. And that's a pattern out of a magazine. I can get you the name. If you want.
Really? Huh.
This one's just I think it's called Midnight.
This one sort
Midnight
of,
Garden, I think.
maybe it doesn't have the same fabrics, but it kind of, oh, I like these. These, I wish I had have seen this the other day because I have a quilt that I'm working on that has just these little areas. It almost looks like a heart to me.
Called a broken. I call it a
Broken
broken
heart.
feather.
Oh, broken
Because that's
feather.
actually a feather
That's
line that's been pulled apart.
Okay.
And here, see, this to me is I let the fabric tell me. So there's so many vines and leaves, so I add just a little bit of a leaf in there. And it just pulls
Good
it all
thinking.
together.
Now this one looks older. Is
That one's the throw that I keep upstairs. And I have made probably 6 of these quilts as gifts. It's a perfect size and fairly simple
Ah,
to give as housewarming gifts and whatnot. So I find the color that people like, like I made it for a friend in California and she's into the lavenders and blues and things, so all her stars were lavender and blue. And then you can use up scraps of
yeah, you're
neutrals, that's the background that you want, so I love that one. That again was in a magazine, so just a quilting magazine.
yes,
pattern.
but it really shows off the quilting. So
And on
pretty.
this one I just did a random, I call it, it's my ideas of freehand frenzy is what I call it. And it's just, I throw in whatever I want. Just start at one corner and go down. So instead of meandering, I don't like to just meander.
I wondered about because what I'm working on now, I get tired of doing the same thing after a while. So, and I'm not good enough to know how to do like a flower there and then you throw that and that moves into a heart. But so that's how you keep from getting bored.
Well,
with
it's more interesting. I
Yes.
mean, it's just more interesting. It's an all-over design. So
But you've got a star here
exactly,
and it looks like a rose
and it's just
there.
more interesting than just a meander. And I'm all about the interesting quilting.
Yes, and that makes it much nicer,
Yeah.
more to look at.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
This one was blocks from the Scrap Basket Guild.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
when we did block of the month and drew for people winning? These were the butterfly blocks that I'd won. And then this was just panel type fabric and just put it together. And I keep saying that'll be for my first granddaughter.
Okay.
So,
Let's go.
yeah, round robins from
Oh, isn't that
Brownsburg
pretty?
child challenges and
I think I remember this fabric.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe
Yeah.
in another color, but oh gosh.
So you can, the quilting, you know, you have so many different styles. Both of these were round robin, so you get a lot of different styles, but the quilting can pull it all together.
Round robins are great fun.
They are fun.
Huh. Very nice. And I seem to remember this pink and green color palette was very popular.
Like
sometime. I don't know
early
when.
in the 90s.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very much so. Christmas, this was a class I took with that Bethany Reynolds.
Oh yes,
The Stack
yes,
and Whack.
the Stack and
When
Whack.
Stack and Whack first came out, and I did
Isn't
that as
that
a Christmas
neat?
throw.
Well, that's a good way
So
to
that
do
one
it. Very
gets
nice.
put away until Christmas
Stack
time
and
dry
Whack,
out.
each of the blocks comes out to be a little bit different, a little bit different design. Oh, nice. Huh.
So I get
And-
poinsettias in them. That's what these are supposed to represent for Christmas time, and holly.
Yes.
In the offset.
Makes sense.
So again, you're thinking, okay, what do I want to use this for? This is, you know, tied
Okay.
together with the quilting. And then this is one of my favorites. I hang this in the living room.
Oh, isn't that? I love the and thread.
Mm-hmm.
When I bring my quilts to Dinah, I don't always say I want red thread or white thread or whatever, but I really like dark thread on here because it really stands out.
Right.
I'm afraid to use dark thread
It can
when
be-
I'm quilting because
yeah.
you can really
It
make it
shows.
look funny.
It shows.
It can detract,
Yeah.
but this is
Yeah.
lovely.
And this
So
again
pretty.
is that freehand frenzy. I didn't want anything in particular in these light spots, so I just threw in whatever fit that
Freehand
worked.
frenzy. I
And
am going to
then-
work on that.
Yeah, and then just put some feathers in there and.
Oh yeah. Just whip up some feathers. Okay.
So,
Very nice,
yeah.
Dinah.
Those are.
Very pretty.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to show one thing that you had done for me.
Mhm.
I've got a couple quilts. I've had several done, as we know. But this is one that I brought
I love
today
this one.
because this was an applique quilt. Well, applique and pieced. And I had taken a class with Suzanne Marshall or something and learned to do this applique and put floss around the edge. So the quilting really mattered to me. I wanted something that took a long time to make some of these blocks. I wanted something that would show off
Mhm.
the applique and yet I did want something that would be in a show. So now it doesn't get used a lot.
That's beautiful. I love that.
But if I did, it would look really nice on the bed if I wanted. So that one was 2010.
Oh, wow.
And then I got one more. This is one of my newer patterns. And this is, got to get this the right way. There. This is called Show Your Heart. And there is a heart in it, like right there. And it's made with African fabrics. But what I really liked about the quilting was she used light, like a white or I think it's a gray fabric, a gray thread. And these designs are very angular, but they really seem to go with this, I don't know, sort of modernish feel. And those are just so perfect, I thought, for this quilt. So I had her, she quilted this and I really loved it. So then I did the quilt in another fabric way with floral fabric. And it's in grays, and then you quilted that one. I said, I want the same thing.
Yeah. I love this. Yeah.
So both quilts are
It's beautiful.
favorites in I really think that quilting, when people see these at shows, they're very taken in with the quilting really makes the quilt.
It does. It just ties everything.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else that we can add. I have a quilt that Dinah is going to work on. Is there anything else you'd like to?
No, I have a
What is
Facebook page. People can contact me on the Facebook page.
Okay. It's called
Dinah's Custom Quilting.
Dinah's Custom Quilting.
And send me a message through Facebook, or I have email dinahscustomquilting@gmail.com.
Okay.
You can email me. So.
Well, thank you so much for offering to help us out or do a little thing about long arm quilting.
Yes.
I think it's really a great thing for quilters when they don't really want to invest in a big machine like
Right. You have to quilt a lot of quilts
to pay for
the machine, or to justify paying for the machine if you're just buying it for yourself. So just hire a quilter.
Plus you need space.
Oh, yes. So just hire a quilter and get it done and enjoy your quilt then.
Yes.
Don't just fold it up and stick it in the closet.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.